Okay, try imagining this case scenario here. You are the sheriff, and you're tired of all these school threats happening. So you take matters in your own hands by arresting an 11-year-old who made a school threat and having someone videotape and post on social media because the sheriff claims that you're not that the parent is not raising the child properly. It's exactly what happened. It's happening in Florida. In Florida, it's exactly what's happening. The sheriff there is arresting the child and putting it all on social media. Even though school started about a month ago, he's fed up about it. So now you'll meet the sheriff and you'll hear what he has to say. And before we get started, I should point out, I do have a little bit of larynx. I do have a little bit of hoarse voice. Just got away, but we are going to get through this. I'm not going to quit. There's always a plan B for me. So if I had to have someone come in and fill in for me, which I couldn't, if they would have filled in for me, then there'd be a whole different story here. So I'll have to go like this throughout the whole show. So take a look at this story.
It's shocking video of an 11-year-old under arrest and in shackles. The local sheriff says he is starting a new policy of posting video like this on social media.
Since parents, you don't want to raise your kids, I'm going to start raising them. Every time we make an arrest, your kid's photo is going to be put out there. And if I can do it, I'm going to perp walk your kid.
Sheriff Mike Chitwood of Volusia County, Florida, says the youngster threatened to commit a mass shooting at a school outside Daytona Beach. He had written a list of names and targets. He says it was all a joke, the sheriff says. First, the 11-year-old is handcuffed, then he's put in ankle shackles.
You have any questions? All right.
The sheriff says he was driven to this extraordinary step of allowing a minor's face to be shown after a wave of threats from him and others made to schools in his county, 54 in all.
All of them have been deemed bogus.
The threats followed the slayings of 2 teachers and 2 students during a school shooting in Georgia. On social media, there is both support for the sheriff's actions as well as concern. This is what needs to happen everywhere, says one. But another says, I hope the parents sue him for parading their 11-year-old around like this.
I'm all for helping out kids, putting them in juvenile detention centers, but I'm against. What I'm against is putting children on social media and then just saying this is what we ought to do. If no one's gonna do this right, I'm gonna do this my way. I'm gonna raise your child. You can't do that. You can't arrest an 11-year-old and put him on social media and charge him off as an adult even though he's 11. You just don't fucking do that. For crying out loud here. You just don't do it. And even if you did, I wouldn't even be here talking about this with a little bit of hoarse throat. I probably wouldn't even be here talking about this if I didn't have a hoarse throat. Now here's some strong words for that sheriff.
A rise across the state. Now, one Florida sheriff is making a stern warning to kids and their parents. In Broward County, 9 students have been arrested for making violent threats to schools since August. Local 10's Cody Weddle is live in Fort Lauderdale at the Broward School Board building with more on how authorities are stepping up to take action. Cody.
And Nicole, this Florida sheriff today, very candid and direct to say the least about this ongoing problem. And this is a problem we're seeing here in South Florida as well.
You know, this is absolutely out of control, and it ends now. Since parents, you don't want to raise your kids, I'm going to start raising them. You think it's a joke? You're going to find your in handcuffs?
Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood not holding back Friday, warning parents and students alike about making threats against schools.
For the little bastards out there to think this is funny, ha ha ha, when I get on social media, you ain't that smart. Let me tell you, you ain't that smart. You're getting caught.
It's a growing problem in Volusia and around the state. Chitwood says his office has received 207 tips about threats to schools already this school year. In South Florida, a similar problem. On Wednesday, Sheriff Gregory Toney and Superintendent Dr. Howard Hepburn announced the arrest of 9 students for posting online threats.
If you did an assessment on every time one of these pranks happen, we're probably burning up about $50,000-$60,000 just for that operation. That's serious, folks.
Those ultimately fake threats mentioned 6 locations, including the Broward County School Board offices.
It can change their trajectory for the rest of their life, oftentimes ending up in arrest and also exposure from schools.
Florida strengthened its penalties for making threats in 2018, making it easier to charge those making the post with felonies.
Go talk to the families who have lost a loved one in a school shooting. These little knuckleheads think it's funny. Go talk to those parents. Every time we make an arrest, your kid's photo is going to be put out there.
All of those arrests in Broward County were students between the ages of 11 and 14 years old, and all of them posted online or in text messages, and all of those kids now facing possible jail time. We're live in Fort Lauderdale tonight. I'm Cody Weddle, Local 10 News.
Let's just throw it out there.
School threats on the rise.
Throw out the common sense alert. We'll do that next, so stay with us. Okay. Common sense alert. If you want to help out children, this is what you do. This is what you do to help out your children. This is what you need to do, and this is how you're going to do it. And if you're going to do this, you do this the right way. Help them out. Throwing them in jail does not teach them anything. It's the parents who are responsible. Parents, you need to talk to your kids about these dangerous things. And them thinking that it's funny, it's not funny. It's not funny. Even though kids out there may think this shit's funny, it just ain't. This ain't one of those times to where you take desperate measures because of what's going on. You just don't do it. It's not that simple to set bad examples at them and go talk to the parents. And don't deal with this, blah, 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 so this and this. You just don't do it. It ain't that simple, really. It ain't that simple. You gotta set a good example out there in every community that you live in. Even if you did, we wouldn't even be here right now. I wouldn't even be here. I would try my very best to just be in everybody's shoes. So what do we do? We gotta set good examples in every community that we live in and start talking to parents, having parents talk to the kids. That's setting a good example. Here's another one.
Good afternoon. Captain Todd Smith.
Here's the full conference.
Oversees school security for the Sheriff's Office and partners with the school district. You know, this is absolutely out of control, and it ends now. 54 and counting tips came in at Fortified, Florida last night. Okay? That means investigators in the school district have been running around the clock to investigate these tips, which are all turning out to be false. So far, it's cost $21,000 to do these investigations. We have 2 in custody. We have an investigation looking at 1 other individual. So far this year, there have been 207 threats who have come in. We've arrested 7 people for written threats to kill. 1 student, if you remember, tried to bring a loaded firearm into a mainland football game. We've had 11 weapons on our campuses this year. So what we're going to start doing Monday is, since parents, you don't want to raise your kids, I'm going to start raising them. Every time we make an arrest, your kid's photo is going to be put out there. And if I can do it, I'm going to perp walk your kid so that everybody can see what your kid's up to. The second point of this is, if I can in any way find out that a parent knew what was going on and wasn't doing anything, your is getting perp walked with him. The purpose of Fortified Florida is to send in tips that we're going to investigate because you believe something is going to happen. To keep sending in these tips over and over and over again and think it's a big joke and Nothing's going to happen to it. Starting Monday, we're going to have a billboard. We're going to have a poster out. I'm going to show you every kid that's been arrested and where they go to school. And then from there on out, we're going to publicly shame them and their parents. So parents, do your job. Don't let Sheriff Chipwood raise your kids. This is absolutely ridiculous. Go talk to the families who have lost a loved one in a school shooting. These little knuckleheads think it's funny. Go talk to those parents and see how funny this is. It's not. We're going to come and get you. We're going to put you out for public embarrassment. And I know a set of parents right now that they're looking at $11,000 each because somebody's paying this bill. Todd, you jump in there?
Yeah, so we're working around the clock, 24/7 to make sure that we investigate every single one of these tips. Obviously, we've had a lot of them. We're working very hard to ensure that every stone is looked under and we're not missing anything, and that everyone is safe and all of our kids are safe. You know, Volusia County schools are very safe schools. We've got a lot of things in place to make our schools safe, between our fencing, our locked doors, our tip system, our content monitor. Everything that we do day in and day out is to keep our kids safe. But at the same time, we have to rely on the public to ensure that everybody is working towards the same mission. You know, the curriculum is built so that kids get their education based on the number of hours that they're in school. So if we're shutting down our schools to try to protect the kids because some kids made a false tip, it's interrupting their ability to learn. And we need to make sure that all of our kids are getting the education that they need and that they're getting it in a nice, safe, and secure environment. And right now, the kids themselves are making the chaos. So we need the parents to help us to bring that back together so that the kids can get the education that they deserve. We have the best security in the entire country in Volusia County. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Tell them about
Yeah, so we've been through multiple audits, and every time we've come out great. We're going through the Auditor General's audit right now. We're doing very well with that. You know, everybody should feel very comfortable with the job that we're doing and all of the things that we have in place. But the one key that we need help with is the kids and the parents working together to ensure that they can get the education that they deserve.
You guys got anything?
Well, I got something. Let's look at all these comments. This has been viewed over 16,000 times. And let me tell you, a lot of people have their 2 cents about this. So let's just look at these comments. A lot of parents are raising little psychopaths. Very good at something parents start being accountable. They need to change the parents. Perfect. Calling it out. I love your determination, brutal honesty. Consequences to be real and impactful. Let's teach you to be accountable as well as the parents not tolerating more. If you arrest a stupid kid, threats a stupid parents says he's good. I mean, if a child makes a threat, it's wasting the taxpayers' money. We pay taxes, and the child makes a threat, say, "Oh, it's just a joke." It's no joke. It's not funny to make a school threat. If you try to make a school threat, then let me tell you something. It ain't no joke to me. It ain't no joke to me making a school threat. And I'll tell you this. Someone who's been doing this for years, I know a lot about school threats. And let me tell you something. I have been in your shoe. If I was in your shoes right now, I would tell you, stop. Don't ever do this. It is unacceptable, and it's going to get you in a lot of trouble. And it can, and it will. Try to be more understandable about this, and I'll tell you. You're wasting a lot of money. Let's go back to what he said.
Cost $21,000.
$21,000. You got $21,000, kids? How you gonna raise $21,000? Go bake sale, cookie sale? What you ought to start doing is start making apologies to the police department saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I made a school threat. Accept the check, accept these cookies, and it won't happen again." That's my apology. It'll never happen again. It won't happen again. I won't do it again. It's bound to happen again in every county, every city you live in. There's no I'm sorries. You have to pay the price. Parents, Talk to your kids. This is common sense. Talk to your child. If you talk to your child, he or she would listen. I mean, it's all over these video games. We recently had a school shooting. And after all this, you think it's funny to make a school threat saying, I'm going to go shoot up a school. Hey, come tomorrow morning, I'm going to go blah, 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 school. I don't care what people think. And yet they find out about it, they tip off the police, and then wastes the taxpayers' money. That's what it's all about. Wasting the money of our tax dollars. You pay for your own mistakes. Parents, start talking to your kids after this broadcast. Because I'll tell you, if you don't talk to your kids, that's going to be your kid in handcuffs. So start talking to your kid. When we come back, the press conference from Duval County. Please stay with us. Tonight we're dealing with school threats as I deal with my hoarse voice. Tonight we're dealing with school threats that are happening even though we're into the second month of the new school year. So far we looked at this in Florida to where one sheriff is putting it all out there for the parents. You need to make sure you talk to your children. Now it's in Duval County in Jacksonville, where one sheriff says he's probably had enough.
Today I'm joined with Dr. Christopher Bernier, Superintendent of Duval County Public Schools, and Adair Newman, one of our Chief Assistants at the State Attorney's Office, to share important information on recent threats of school-based violence. Yesterday, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office arrested 3 juveniles for making threats to do harm in area charter schools. I'm sharing this information because I want the public to know how seriously we take any public safety threat in our schools. The 3 juveniles that JSO arrested yesterday are very young, 11, 12, and 13 years old respectively. While we do not relish arresting preteens or young teenagers, the threats made by these juveniles compelled us to act. Sadly, the recent school shooting in Georgia has shown us that even the very young can commit unspeakable acts of violence. Here in Jacksonville, we will not sit on our hands and wait to see if those who make threats act on their words. We will be proactive and we will arrest. We will not wait to see if threatening words will be coupled with violence. Although all 3 arrests were made yesterday, these threats were made electronically differing times during the new school year. JSO only became aware of these threats very recently. The 11-year-old made a threat to River City Science Academy in a group chat thread on August 22nd. And in these text messages, he wrote, "Hello, fellow citizens. Don't worry. Just come to school tomorrow. Just don't come to school tomorrow unless you want 15 pounds of lead added to you at an extremely fast rate." And that is a quote. He was arrested for sending a written threat to conduct a mass shooting, which is a second-degree felony. The 12-year-old made a threat to Idea River Bluff Charter School through Instagram messages sent on September 9th. In these messages, this juvenile said that he would shoot up the school. He was arrested for sending a written threat to conduct a mass shooting, a second-degree felony. The 13-year-old made a threat to Idea Bassett Charter School. This juvenile posted an Instagram story on her account stating, "Don't come to school tomorrow if you want to live." She was arrested for sending a written threat to kill, which is a second-degree felony. Our children are our most precious resource. Students and teachers deserve to feel safe and be safe in our schools. This agency will not, under any circumstance, tolerate victimization of children, even if those committing these crimes are children themselves. JSO will thoroughly investigate every threat of school-based violence. If there's probable cause for an arrest, we will arrest no matter if the perpetrator is 90 years old or 10 years old. It doesn't matter if the threat is made online, in a text chain, on paper, or out loud. I want all Jacksonville citizens to know that we will have zero tolerance for school threats or school shootings. Before we take your questions, the superintendent would like to make a few remarks.
Yes, sir. And thank you to the sheriff and the entire JSO department for their help and support. Safety takes everyone in our community. As the Duval County Public School Superintendent, I want to echo the sheriff's words that we will not tolerate students or others who makes threats against our schools. A threat can never be dismissed as a joke or a prank, and we as a school district will pursue the strongest disciplinary consequences available to us. Besides disciplinary consequences, as the sheriff said, making a threat can often lead to criminal consequences that you heard today. Yesterday, our school police also made 2 arrests for students who have alleged to have made threats against their school building. If a threat rises to the level of a crime, we will absolutely pursue criminal consequences as well. These consequences are life-changing, but necessary in order to protect the health and safety of all of our employees and all of our students. I want to continue to say that academics is always our primary goal, but students cannot learn if they don't feel safe. Teachers can't teach if they don't feel safe. Parents, we need you to have a difficult conversation with your children. There are certain things you should never say in an airport as you approach security. And similarly, you should never write or state a threat to harm a school, student, or a person in our community. If that happens, this community will use every tool it has to address it. And we'll do everything in our power to ensure that each of our students and faculty members feel safe in our schools. Thank you, Sheriff.
So before I take questions, I do want to say this, and here's the warning. And I don't do this lightly. This is not a light thing for me. You heard the ages of the kids. Do not, under any circumstance, in any school, charter school, online, make a threat to shoot up our schools. We're not going to sit back and allow you to make that threat. We are going to act on it. And that's my promise to this community. Our kids, once again, are our most precious resource. We have to make sure that we keep them safe. So with that, I'll take questions.
Sheriff, actually, I have 2 questions. One for you and one for you. Sheriff, can you clarify, none of the threats were made electronically. Can you clarify how you were made aware of them, who alerted you? And for Dr. Bernier, you said that your officers arrested 2 students. Are we saying that there's 5 total in addition to the 3 that the sheriff spoke of?
So I'll speak to the 3 that we arrested. I can tell you those threats came through our intelligence unit, learned of those threats, and began the investigative process for those threats. Once we got those threats, once we found out about them, then that's when we took action through after our investigation. Dr. Bernier.
From the school system's point of view, yes, we had 2 additional arrests that we wanted to make sure that we made the community aware of based upon our students and the actions of our police department. We can give you more information through Tracy, our
So 5 students total arrested?
2, the 3 that the sheriff messaged, and 2 specifically who go to Duval County traditional public schools.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. I have a question for you, Dr. Bernier. Can you tell us the ages of those students and what schools they are?
That information will be available through Tracy Pierce, our Chief of Communications.
Yes, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
What type of tangible threat after the fact through the investigation was found? Did these students have access to any type of weapons that you're aware of?
There's nothing beyond the threat that I'm telling you about that we'll discuss openly right now. The process is still ongoing. From what I know, no, there was not. But you don't ever want to say definitively that that possibility is not there. But what we can tell you now that it was not. It was just a threat at this point.
I noticed you said
Following recent threats to local schools, you just heard there from Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters as well as the Superintendent of Duval County Public Schools, Christopher Bernier, both making it clear that a threat cannot be dismissed as a joke or a prank. We heard the superintendent mention that the school system there, their school police arrested 2 students, 2 juveniles, and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, they arrested 3, just ages 11, 12, 13 years old. Again, these are juveniles arrested for making threats on social media, he said. These were electronic threats. But again, they want to hammer home the point that parents need to have a difficult conversation with their children about how serious this is and the implications if they decide to make a threat that they may perceive as innocent against their schools.
Look, you can make jokes about threats all you want. This is taken very seriously. If you think about doing this tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, you're going to be in trouble. And believe me, you're going to be sitting in that jail cell thinking to yourself, hey, I should not have done this. And you're going to be crying home to your mommies and daddies saying that, hey, it wasn't my fault. A friend of mine told me to do it. I mean, don't listen to your friends. Your friends tell you, you tell your friends, hey, I don't want to go to school. What can I do? And they tell you, well, you can make a bomb threat. And it's like, I don't want to. If you don't remember the episode of Everybody Hates Chris, Chris didn't want to take the test. So Greg decided to recommend to him that he make a bomb threat. And, they let out of school and stuff like that happens, but it didn't happen. Nobody was sent home, They went back in and took the test. So it just comes to show you what you need to make sure of. Eleven, 12, 13-year-olds making threats towards schools. Get the parents. All right. Here's a question for you. Could you spot vapes in school supplies? Think about this. You're going to school. And then all of a sudden, your child goes to school, and all of a sudden, they decide to bring a vape. You don't know about the vape, but they hide it in a school supply, like in highlighters or pens. But can you really spot these? Can you really spot them? Well, let's take a look.
It's a common sight this time of year. Pens and pencils, highlighters and notepads ready to be packed up and taken to school. But what if I told you not everything on this table is what it seems? Does anything look out of the norm to you? We put our coworkers to the test.
No. If I were to tell you that some items on this table were actually vapes and not school supplies, are there any that you would suspect?
The pen looks too bulky. Nope, that's really a highlighter.
I wouldn't know at all.
I want to say one of these highlighters.
Do you think you would immediately know that it wasn't a normal school supply?
Not at all. If you weren't looking for it, there's no way that you'd see that.
Pens, highlighters, hoodies with vapes in the strings. These devices are getting easier to hide, harder to spot, and they're popping up in classrooms across the country.
They're more bold. Sometimes they'll even do it in a classroom with a teacher there.
Catherine Lissy with Northside ISD says it's a constant struggle. These are just a few of the traditional vapes the NISD Police Department has taken into evidence, but others hide in plain sight.
The companies that are making vapes look a lot different. I mean, sometimes they could look like a highlighter or a coffee cup, not just traditional what we're used to seeing.
Well, that tells me that this is a trend that's here to stay.
Dr. Lawrence Kwong is the chief of pediatric emergency medicine at Christus Children's Hospital. He calls vaping a national epidemic.
Our state government agencies need to, come down on these companies, right? I mean, they're skirting the law, skirting the law, and targeting our youth.
The federal government is taking action on this. The FDA sent this warning letter to the company that makes highlight vapes, which look almost identical to a typical highlighter. The agency writes that the product is concerning because it, quote, helps conceal the nature of the product as a tobacco product from parents, teachers, or other adults. Experts warn you to be on the lookout for these devices and talk to your kids about the risks associated with vaping. Schools are doing the same.
It has to be all hands on deck. Parents, public health, and the medical community.
For the News 4i team, I'm Jordan Elder.
We reported that local school districts were worried that a new law requiring harsher punishments for vaping on school campuses would lead to harmful and unintended consequences. As News 4 San Antonio's Matt Roy reports, so far those fears haven't been realized.
This legislative session, House Bill 114 was passed, requiring any student caught vaping within 300 feet of a school campus to have a hearing and be placed into an alternative learning setting on their first strike. The law alarmed districts, thinking it would overwhelme their alternative learning campuses.
I don't think the law is going to serve the purpose it was looking for because it didn't provide additional funding for staff members nor capacity to be able to serve individuals.
But 6 weeks into the new school year, the law seems, at least for now, to be working.
What we've seen so far is an overall decrease with regards to the numbers that we've had come into our office.
At NEISD, THC vape usage has dropped about 12% year over year, and nicotine vaping usage has dropped 10%.
I think that's the best outcome we could probably expect. We really do hope that these numbers sustain.
Northside is seeing similar, albeit less dramatic, results. By the end of October last year, NISD had 475 disciplinary hearings. This year, there are nearly 300 through just October 5th.
I would say for me, it's not as much as I was concerned to have.
Northside Student Advocacy Director Catherine Leasing says numbers are lower for now.
If they keep tracking like this, we'll be considerably higher than we were last year. But again, not as bad as I was fearful of. So.
NEISD's Tyler Shoesmith attributes the decrease to the district's educational campaign, social media, and media stories informing families of the repercussions of vaping.
I'm happy to be wrong.
Now, they're just hoping the law keeps working. Matt Roy, News 4, San Antonio.
E-cigarette use among high school kids has jumped a staggering 1,000% in just 1 year. That data from 2019 to 2020 in this Addicted Texas report. News 4 San Antonio's Amanda Henderson explains what's being done to keep e-cigs out of the hands of children.
You've probably seen this a time or two recently. Vapes are popular among adults and teenagers, despite the legal age to buy them being 21.
I've seen where they'd rather give up anything else.
B. Blackman works with Rise Inspire Academy. The high school helps support youth in drug and alcohol recovery.
A lot of the teens, they think, oh, it's just a nicotine vape, it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. Like you said, it can definitely become a felony.
In Texas, a vape pen with THC results in a felony. Blackman says it's not just high schoolers using them. Sometimes it's children in the 5th and 6th grade.
Within the first couple of weeks, they become dependent.
According to Truth Initiative, a tobacco control nonprofit, nearly 90% of kids who vape also use an e-cigarette. Sales for the latter have risen nearly 50% from January 2020 to December 2022. Cross River Therapy says about 15% of high schoolers and 4% of middle schoolers have used e-cigarettes. Abigail Moore says San Antonio is seeing similar trends.
The numbers have doubled in school districts here in Bexar County. Young people getting caught with vaping cartridges at school. If young people are vaping and are caught at school with vaping products, they are expelled and sent to alternative schools.
The San Antonio Council on Alcohol and Drug Awareness CEO says teens and children are 20% more likely to become addicted to vapes than adults. Moore says one vape pod can have as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes.
That they're getting a hold of these vaping tools, and they're vaping without their parents' knowledge.
She also says they want young people to join their coalition of education about the impact and consequences of vapes. You can find information on that and on resources on our website. Reporting in San Antonio, I'm Amanda Henderson.
Here's the bottom line. Don't vape. It's bad. It's going to get you in trouble. And you'll land in jail. Okay. Alright. I just don't vape. I hate vaping. I don't vape. And if I were to vape, I'd tell you. But right now I'm telling you that I don't. No ifs, no ands, no buts, no excuses. I don't vape at all. At all. At all. All right. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take a break here. I'm gonna rest my voice for just a little bit, and then, okay, we're gonna take a break. We'll be right back. There's something more like it than car leasing. Car leasing is probably one of the best things probably like one of the least best things you can ever count on. And as we're about to show you with a hidden camera, car leasing can often lead to you being ripped off. Probably so. Here's Rene Poussin.
Now that he's gone, I'm sure that he wouldn't want you to deny yourself in his absence. Joy O'Brien, Trojan Auto.
What is this?
My business card.
You're not trying to sell me a car, are you? At my husband's funeral? Before he's even in the ground?
It's the oldest stereotype. A car salesman doing anything to make you buy. But have you been in a car dealership lately?
The worst place you can ever invest your money is into an automobile.
It's coming to the point where people are not even buying cars anymore.
That's right. Many car salesmen these days don't want you to buy. They want you to lease.
See, we learned a long time ago, you don't buy things that depreciate. You lease them.
You can lease a fully equipped Accord LX for $0 down and $269 a month. So you can get something you really want and not spend a lot of money.
The appeal is easy to understand. No money down, low monthly payments, a chance to drive a car you might not be able to afford. But as our primetime investigation uncovered, leasing isn't always a good deal. It can be another way for clever salesmen to claim new victims. It took in this cop.
They were very good con artists.
It took in this school teacher.
They quoted me figures that I don't know where they came from.
And as you'll see, it almost took in primetime when I went undercover to lease a car.
Accountants are being ripped off on the leases. Lawyers are being ripped off. The leasing program is designed to confuse and befuddle even the most educated of consumers.
Buying a car is tough enough, but at least you know the price you're paying and the interest you're being charged. They're written right on the contract. With leasing, that's not the case. The only number you'll ever know for sure is that low monthly payment. What about the interest rate, the price of the car, the value of your trade-in? Those numbers, which the lease payment is based on, are not written in the contract. They can get lost in a complicated transaction most accountants can't even unravel. And that's the way some unscrupulous salesmen like it.
They're trying to convince you that it's an alternative way to pay for it. And in fact, it's really an alternative way to make more money.
Timothy Wolfing and David Stivers are salesmen with a lot of experience who agreed to give us a step-by-step guide to the latest tricks. We set out with undercover shoppers and hidden cameras.
The advantages you have on a lease versus a retail.
And with a word of warning from Florida's Attorney General, Bob Butterworth.
They'll tell you anything, not to have to tell you what the real numbers are.
I want to get down to payments and terms.
Our undercover shopper, Margaret, a computer analyst, went to our first stop, Ed Boyle's Honda in Atlanta.
It's the cheapest way to ever drive an automobile, period.
It certainly can be, but Margaret was about to encounter what our experts recognized as one of the most common ploys, the now you see it, now you don't interest rate. Margaret came in wanting to buy a Honda Accord, but the salesman said the loan rate would be expensive.
10.5.
10.5? I can't get better than 10.5?
Not on a buy, he said, but on a lease.
They're going to loan you money right now. Honda has money at 3%.
Sounds too good to be true. And our experts say it is. Margaret's contract would have cost far more than 3%, and she never knew it.
In fact, it figures out to be 8.4%.
So that's more than twice as much.
That's correct.
Terrence O'Loughlin is an investigator for the Florida Attorney General's office. He checked Margaret's deal. So how much did this cost us?
Slightly over $2,000 over a 3-year period of time.
How could it happen? Simple. The law didn't require the salesman to disclose the interest rate on Margaret's leasing contract. Without an expert at her elbow, Margaret had no way to know what rate he actually charged to get her monthly payment.
Are you interested in a Toyota Easy Drive lease?
Margaret would run into exactly the same ploy at another dealer, Atlanta Toyota.
Well, the main thing you're missing is in the overall picture is that the rate here is 3% as opposed to 7.75 in a buy.
But the real interest rate here, never disclosed to Margaret, was more than double what she was quoted, an overcharge of $2,600. But our expert said we'd only seen the tip of the iceberg.
The big lie in leasing is that the price of the car is being secretly increased thousands of dollars, and the customer has no idea that this is happening.
We call it the secret price boost. Florida schoolteacher Susan Squire says it happened to her.
I was able to talk them down to 16.4. Even the sales manager came in and shook my hand.
She'd just finished negotiating to buy a new car when the pitch suddenly turned to leasing.
They were trying to convince me that that was the way to go, that leasing would be the cheapest way. And it was, according to the figures that he was showing me on paper.
Squire says the salesman showed her how a monthly lease payment would be far less than the monthly loan payment to buy the car.
You don't think that they're going to be sitting there lying to you about the purchase price of the car.
But apparently they did. After friends said her payment seemed high, Susan began to investigate. She discovered the lease was based on a sale price over $2,000 higher than the price she just negotiated. So how could that happen?
You could promise the customers a price that you were not giving them because the price does not show up on the lease contract.
Okay, so back with our shopper Margaret at Atlanta Toyota, and forewarned, she made sure to ask whether that $23,999 sale price still applied in the lease. See if you can understand his answer.
Now, the capitalized cost, the cost that Toyota's going to pay us for this car is going to be more than $23,999. But that's what they're going to pay us for it, not what you're going to pay us for the car.
The finance man told Margaret not to worry about any increase.
So it doesn't affect your payment, but it does affect the way the numbers unfold.
Absolutely false.
Financial consultant Jim Myron, our other expert, checked Margaret's deal.
Who pays for it?
The consumer.
How? Once again, the sales price was never written down. In this case, the price boost was about $3,000, bringing Primetime's potential loss so far to almost $8,000 at just 2 dealerships.
I didn't know what I was doing. And I made the mistake of letting them, believing them.
James Sikowitz, a Florida police officer, told us about his encounter with another car leasing trick. It's called the disappearing trade-in. He went to buy a Dodge Caravan and was offered $7,000 for his trade-in. When he was switched to a lease, he says he was assured the trade-in still applied. But a few days later, he got suspicious.
I started looking into it, and I realized that I didn't get $7,000 credit for my car. I only got $1,300 credit for my car.
$1,300 instead of the $7,000?
Yes.
That's a big difference.
Very big difference.
It's what Timothy Wolfing calls a big score.
When you get a big high gross profit, it's a home run. It's a touchdown. You know,
No matter how you got it.
Exactly.
And just like Sikowitz, we got suspicious when our second undercover shopper was offered a generous trade-in deal. This salesman at Bob Kazuli Toyota in New Jersey offered $6,000 for this 3-year-old compact car. But there was a hitch. It wouldn't be in writing.
The only thing you're better off is not showing your trade on here. If you show that I'm giving you $6,000 for your vehicle, you're going to have to pay tax on $6,000. So this is going to be empty.
Our veteran salesman said not only was it funny, it was typical and flat out wrong.
I've never heard of a state that actually charges a customer because you list a trade-in.
Then when you come back to scream, you got nothing to scream about because you have no idea what they gave you for your trade. It's done deliberately.
Our shopper was already losing, but it was about to get worse. She agreed to put $1,000 down to make her lease payments even lower. The final charge? $364 a month.
How did we do?
In this case, it looks as though it should have been $153 per month.
$153? What did they do?
It doesn't appear as though they credited the consumer with the cash and trade-in fully into the transaction.
Another $7,500 bite for prime time. A bite so big, the salesman could even appear to be generous. When our shopper balked at the deal, he gave her $60 off the monthly payment.
Get slow. And so we're a very high volume store. We do a lot of crazy things.
And Stiver says that at some places that has to do with dollars and cents.
What happens is greed takes over. Salespeople that have raised their commission from $100 up to $1,000 on the same car by telling the leasing lies suddenly are making more money.
I saw firsthand how someone might be taken and not know it when I accompanied a shopper into Maxon Honda in New Jersey. We got what I thought was a good price for a new four-wheel drive Passport and $10,000 for our trade-in. So what did our monthly lease payment come to?
It's $389 a month. You should have paid $193 a month, not $389 a month.
And what did they do?
Was the $10,000 trade-in credited?
Part of it was. Approximately $5,800 of it was.
And the rest of it was?
Dealer profit.
So instead of a good deal, we ended up potentially overpaying $7,000. All told, we made 10 trips to car dealerships. 5 times we were offered leasing options, and in every one of those cases, we were overcharged. The potential loss for us and the potential windfall for the dealers was over $26,000. So is this kind of thing widespread?
We believe it is a national problem.
Attorney General Bob Butterworth has spent 2 years investigating car leasing practices in his home state of Florida.
We've gone through 26,000 cold files. Of those, we have found about 10% of those are flagrantly bad.
So why isn't more being done about the problem? He says many people don't know they've been victimized.
What we're asking for in law enforcement is that we want full disclosure to that consumer so that consumer can make an intelligent decision as to whether or not they want to lease a vehicle or buy a vehicle.
And as we found out, asking the right questions doesn't always get the right answers.
How come the sale price or the interest rate isn't on here?
There is no interest rate.
See, leasing doesn't have a selling price of a vehicle.
And how do the dealers we visited explain the discrepancies? Atlanta Toyota said the interest overcharge was a mistake, and it will be taking action to make sure it won't happen again. Ed Boyle's Honda also agreed it should not have happened. As for our disappearing trade-in deals, Maxon refused to comment. And when I paid Kasuli Toyota a visit...
No cameras in here?
No, but you're welcome to buy a car.
Well, we're
We're
not...
happy to talk to you, but no cameras here.
Well, we want to ask you about your leasing practices.
Our
It's
leasing practices?
$7,000 that's missing.
No, your mistake was you didn't understand we were going to give the money back on the trade, but that's okay.
Off camera, they explained that they would have given our shopper a check for the trade-in. That's why it wasn't figured into the payments. But our shopper was never told that. For prime time, it was a lesson in leasing. For many others, the loss is real.
How critical in this day and age is that $5,000 to you?
Very critical.
I mean,
$5,000 to anybody, I think, is a lot of money. To me, it is.
So what can you do to protect yourself? Well, here's our primetime tip sheet. First, be sure to negotiate the price of the car as if you're going to buy it before telling the dealer you want to lease. Then make sure the price doesn't change in the lease calculations. You can do that by getting it in writing, along with the interest rate you're paying, the value of your trade-in, and how much you would pay for the car if you decided to buy it at the end of the lease. If they won't put it in writing, find another dealer who will. And note the termination penalties at the end of the lease. Wear and tear, excessive mileage, or returning your car early can add a lot to the cost of the leasing. And remember Florida Attorney General Bob Butterworth? He's joined with 21 other state attorneys general to recommend a consumer checklist that can help you when you start your shopping. For a copy, send a stamped self-addressed envelope to Reality Check, Post Office Box 19405, Washington, D.C. 20036.
So now we know all about car leasing. We know how it can happen and how you can probably not pay. Coming up next, a story about dolphins. And even one child. And even one child that could even put a smile on a dolphin's face. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Could there ever be a difference between handicapped children and dolphins? Well, if you read some of the studies all about dolphins, they can listen to a human voice and mimic it with their own sounds. Like the same way we remember our telephone numbers. Tonight you're going to meet a little boy who years ago had open heart surgery, had some kind of heart operation, and and you'll see a match rapport happening between handicapped children and dolphins. And as you'll see, it can happen in the Florida Keys. Here's John Quinones.
For more than 50 million years, long before man ever walked the earth, they have graced this dark underworld with majestic beauty. For decades, we've known them as the most intelligent creatures of the sea, next on the intellect scale to humans and primates. It now turns out they may be smarter and perhaps more sensitive than we thought. Scientists at Dolphins Plus, a research center in the Florida Keys, have discovered that dolphins display a surprising array of human-like feelings, like joy and compassion, particularly for children who are physically or mentally impaired. Children like 5-year-old Joey Hoagland.
Never ever did I expect a baby to come this way, or to be hurt this way, or to have to suffer in that way.
Joey was born with truncus arteriosus, a rare congenital heart disease that robs the body of oxygen. By the time he was 3 years old, Joey had undergone 3 open heart surgeries. After the last operation, he suffered a stroke. The left side of Joey's body was paralyzed. He was blind in his left eye. Dina and Peter Hoagland could only watch as their infant son lay in a coma for 8 days.
He was absolutely limp. He was less than a newborn. He didn't have swallow response. He couldn't talk. He couldn't cry. There were times when, 2 times that I can remember, that the doctors came in and said, "We don't think that you should leave. We think that maybe he's not going to make it."
Joey finally came out of the coma. Doctors said he might even recover. But after such a long ordeal, he refused to cooperate with doctors or physical therapists.
The kid was petrified. Can you imagine yourself being in a coma and waking up to something like that with bleeping machines?
He didn't trust humans.
I was concerned he wouldn't trust us.
The Hoaglands had just about given up hope for Joey's recovery, but then they heard about a natural dolphin habitat in Key Largo, Florida.
Dolphins Plus is a research center, not an entertainment resort. So there are no shows here where the dolphins perform tricks for the crowd. In fact, here, the dolphins are free to swim out to sea if they choose. And while they're taught to respond to hand signals, they don't have to earn their food by performing. Whatever interaction there is with humans here is strictly at the dolphins' discretion.
Although the emphasis is on research, the center does allow a select group of properly trained visitors to swim with the dolphins. It was at one of these sessions 13 years ago that Betsy Smith, a sociologist at Dolphins Plus, noticed that her mentally retarded brother showed improved mental agility after swimming with dolphins. After a bit more experimenting, she discovered that dolphins worked especially well with children.
As soon as I put a handicapped child in the water, this dolphin relaxes, becomes very different, very, very quiet and calm, and will stay with and work with that child as long as it takes.
By the time Joey arrived at the center last year, the 12 dolphins who live here had helped dozens of children.
That's part of what we call their altruistic behavior. They care for their sick, and they care for their ailing and their elderly, and we think it's an extension of what's natural behavior for the dolphin. You communicate, you care, you live in synchronicity, we call it. They're being dolphins.
When he first laid eyes on the dolphins, Joey was shy and apprehensive. But then a friendly dolphin named Fonzie swam up to greet him. And though Joey was afraid to get into the water, Fonzie would not take no for an answer. A few days later, the swim therapy began. Joey weighs 40 pounds, Fonzie 700 pounds. Yet when Joey couldn't move his leg, the powerful dolphin nuzzled up and gently moved it for him. When Joey couldn't lift his arms above his head, Fonzie would toss out a ball and make Joey toss it back. Pretty soon, Joey, who couldn't unclench his paralyzed hand, was practicing in his sleep so that someday he could grab a fish to feed Fonzie.
I heard him talking, so I went into his room and he was fast asleep, going, try again. Open, shut them. Open, shut them. Just keep trying and you'll get it.
What did Fonzie do that medicine couldn't provide?
Emotional therapy.
Chris Blankenship is a marine biologist and Joey's therapist.
But this is a dolphin.
I think that there is an aspect to dolphins that no one yet really understands.
Exactly what does Fonzie understand about Joey's illness? Well, no one knows for sure, but some experts believe dolphins can sense when a person is ill. Already, some studies show that dolphins display a powerful stress-reducing effect on children. Kids who swim with them become deeply relaxed and therefore much more receptive to teaching.
These animals are not just unfeeling, swimming hunks of meat.
Doctors John Schul and David Smith are scientists and experts on animal behavior. They've just completed a 2-year study on the mind of the dolphin. They taught a dolphin named Nachua to respond to different pitches of sound underwater, as seen on this videotape. Watch the 3 panels at the bottom of the screen. When Nachua heard a high-pitched tone, he learned to push the panel on the right. When he heard a low tone, he pushed the one on the left. But then the researchers made things a little more difficult on Nachua by playing tones that were neither high nor low.
He starts to make a lot of errors and gets a little upset with us during that phase of the experiment. But at that point, we give him a third paddle that he can press, which he can press to escape into an easier channel.
And that, say the researchers, was their most important finding. Nachua knew when to say, I don't know.
We know that he doesn't know the right answer there. And the fact that he uses this bailout response on those trials suggests to us that he knows that he doesn't know the right answer there.
Why is it so important for us to know that?
If you realize that these are thinking, feeling, perhaps self-aware animals, you realize that they have a much deeper kind of relationship to you.
A relationship with humans, the researchers say, is greatly enhanced by the dolphin's remarkable sonar capacity.
They can perceive very fine variations in hardness and texture and size using their hearing alone.
So they can read a human being in the water, for instance.
They can read a human being in the water, and given what we know about sonar, there's reason to suspect that they may be able to use their sonar to perceive things that are going on within the skin. The same way that physicians now use ultrasound in order to get a look at fetuses in the womb.
That sensitive sonar, say scientists, may allow dolphins to detect certain handicaps in humans. That comes as no surprise to Dina Hoagland, who's convinced that Fonzie knows exactly what he's doing for Joey.
Something very wonderful happened. They developed a friendship, and Fonzie accepted Joe just the way he was and showed Joe what he could do. Fonzie never concentrated on what Joe couldn't do.
After just 8 months of therapy, Joey now lugs a heavy pail of fish to feed his buddy.
Get right out of my hand!
Once he couldn't move a finger on his left hand. Now he wiggles it away. Well, that's the signal that makes Fonzie talk, dolphin style. He still takes daily doses of medicine to keep his heart beating properly.
To relax the muscle in the heart.
But aside from the medicine, Joey seems as normal
And
as any other 5-year-old.
I'm always in awe that this is my little boy with a 700-pound dolphin. Their relationship is kind of like two best friends that are secret pals that share something so very special that they'll both know about for the rest of their lives and will never, ever forget.
Since that story first aired, Joy has undergone another open-heart surgery. His mother says playing videotape of Fonzie helped him recover. Today, Joy's doing very well. He goes to a special school for children with learning disabilities where he's learning how to read. Joy now swims by himself and dives into the pool with the dolphins, and of course his best buddy is Fonzie.
Super cool. What a great story all about dolphins. And even then, it could probably help with my throat, if it happened. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Finally tonight, we know that Breast Cancer Awareness Month is just weeks away. So with that in mind, we're getting you to a woman who's an ABC affiliate. You're about to meet this woman who became a news maker. Not just news anchor, but a news maker. She has breast cancer, and as you're about to hear, she made the news. She was the making of the news. Take a look. Take a look at this act of courage. And you'll probably believe me.
In a woman so young, breast cancer is rare.
This is the breast of a 35-year-old woman. It's my breast.
Leslie Mouton anchors the news in San Antonio, and she discovered a lump during a monthly breast self-examination. A few days later, she was hugging her husband and 2.5-year-old daughter before surgery. But she couldn't avoid the chemotherapy she so dreaded.
I didn't cry when I found out I had cancer. I didn't cry when I went through surgery. I cried when I left the oncologist's office and he said to me, "You're going to lose your hair, accept it." I think the reason it was so emotional for me is because I'm a TV news anchor. My hair is a big part of who I thought my identity was. And I found out it's the same way with all women. That is the most feared part of their cancer, is losing your hair in chemo.
She knew there would be sickness and loss of her hair, all of it. But 2 weeks later, when her hair started to fall out, she faced the devil head on. She invited her friends and family over.
Everybody tied braids in my hair and put little pink ribbons on each braid, and I call them memory locks.
She presented a lock to everyone, and then the serious cutting began. Her husband, Air Force Major Tony Maddox, who has flown in the Gulf War and Kosovo, says he was emotionally overcome. So to support his wife, he shaved his head too.
Here we go, Daddy!
More extreme than me being in combat. I just wanted to show her and prove to her that, hey, we did this together, we will stay together.
Mouton took KSAT's viewers through all the stages of her treatment.
The last 4 months have been the toughest of my life. Surgery.
She came to feel there was a spiritual purpose to her illness. Over the weeks that followed,
all of a sudden I looked in the mirror when I was bald and I went, big deal. What have I been so freaked out about? It's still me and I look pretty good. Look at this beautiful head God gave me. And from that moment on, I decided I am not going to walk around covering it up everywhere I go. I'm not going to do it.
She has grown in your eyes.
Absolutely. Extremely tall. She's about 10 feet, I was at 50 feet tall now. And able to tower over me and look down and say, okay, I can deal with this, so can you.
I go into stores, into restaurants, bald. I walk around bald all the time. The only time I wear my wig is for the news.
She has taken off her wig and will join us for the rest of this newscast without her hair.
And then last Friday, the ultimate statement.
That's a pretty great thing to do.
Thank you, Steve. I don't think it's really brave. I really look at it as something that's necessary.
She says she did it for her fellow breast cancer patients.
This is my reality. I'm bald. And so I thought a good way for me to stand up for all of them and to show that it's not so bad to be bald is to be bald and to do it on television.
Do you think that your positive attitude has made a difference in your health?
I think it's crucial. So even if the cancer gets me in the long run, at least I'm going to love life to the very end. And I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to thank God every day for the day I have.
One of the reasons Leslie Mouton went public is to encourage even young women to do monthly breast exams. Today, she's cancer-free, and her doctors say her prognosis is good.
That was a good story. A great story, actually. In the weeks ahead, we're weeks away from Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and coming soon, we are going to have the story. We're going to have the story of Melissa Etheridge, who years ago had. Sure. We're going to have the story about Melissa Etheridge. She was one of the. She was one of the women who had breast cancer awareness, who had breast cancer. And now she's telling her story. Here's a sneak peek. Here's a preview.
Big line.
Wow. Tell me the story.
And what a story it is. A week ago tonight, Melissa Etheridge shared her heart and heartbreak with the world.
When I walked out on stage, I knew that there would be a certain amount of
Her first performance since she was diagnosed with breast cancer inspired millions. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, she tells us what inspired her.
maybe this will help somebody who's sitting on chemo, laying in bed and going, God, I'm bald, isn't this weird?
How bad were the last few months?
It's the closest to death I have ever been.
And what was it like to walk out on that stage?
I thought you looked beautiful. Just beautiful. How did you feel you looked?
Melissa Etheridge, a Stone Phillips exclusive, the Dateline interview.
That's coming soon. Coming in weeks. The story of Melissa Etheridge, who survived breast cancer, and especially a song that she wrote. We're not going to play that song because of copyright violations, but if my voice feels better, I'd be the first one to play it for you. Even for this broadcast. So I really appreciate you sticking with me as my voice starts to I really appreciate you sticking with me as my voice throughout this broadcast, throughout my voice, meaning my voice is acting all raw. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and yes, in future references, I'm gonna have somebody that's gonna help me out. So I know your comment saying, you should have someone help you out here. This is at the third. I'm gonna try to do that. I might hire somebody to help me out here. Heck, I might hire Taylor Alanis to help me through this. And even then, we would both be co-anchoring together. That'd be the first. I appreciate you sticking with me throughout my hoarse voice. That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Monday going to Tuesday. As I rest my voice, we might be off the rest of the week. But if I feel better on Wednesday, we'll see you on Wednesday. If I feel better on Thursday, we'll do a throwback Thursday. If I do feel better on Friday, we'll do a Friday. If I don't feel better back then, I'll see you when I see you. So, as I rest my voice, for all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, stop bullying, speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Even though it's legal in California. Coming up on Wednesday, if I feel better, if my voice feels better. Why is jaywalking legal in California when only 49 states make it illegal? Why? That story's coming up on Wednesday. Have a good night.